it's not easy. Doesn't mean that it's easy. And it must have been difficult for Paul to realize, like, man, I've been wrong my whole life. My parents and my grandparents and my cousins and everybody that I know, we've been wrong our whole lives. But it doesn't matter, because now that I've realized that, I'm going to turn from it. And if we're going to let anything get in the way of our relationship with God, let it not be the same sins that we struggle with over and over again. We have to be willing, if we're going to go all in, to really surrender the sins that we deal with. And so number 4, Paul surrendered himself. He surrendered his whole life. It wasn't that he just gave up the things that he had and the bed, and it wasn't that he just gave up being famous and his status, and it wasn't just that he stopped sinning and that kind of thing. It was that he really devoted his life to spreading the gospel. He said, I've been given this amazingly good news. This is world-changing news. I can't keep this to myself. And so he said, let me just give up my comfort, my life, my whatever. It doesn't matter. I just want to surrender that and use the life that I have to spread the gospel so that other people can know about this. And so you read the New Testament, and he wrote half of the books in the New Testament are written by Paul. It makes up a grand total of like a third of the New Testament. And all of those letters from Paul are letters to different cities and different churches that he started. And he would explain to them the gospel and the good news. And these are people who had never heard of it before. And he didn't dumb it down. He said, by following Jesus, yeah, you may face persecution, and it may not be the most comfortable thing in life, but the fact that Jesus died on the cross and rose again in our place, that makes it worth it. And so Paul really just devoted his whole life, and it didn't matter what struggles I have to go through, what prison I have to sit in, what ocean I have to avoid sharks in, what rocks I have to endure, the rods that I'm beaten with. It doesn't matter what I have to face, because I'm surrendering my whole life. I'm giving up my rights in order to really make the gospel famous. And so it didn't matter what he had to go through. He wanted to spread that message. He surrendered his life. And we grow up and we have this Americanized culture, this Americanized idea of what we consider the good life. And, we say these prayers, right? Lord, just keep us safe and give me just a nice running car and a good paying job and a comfy house and be with my family and my kids, and let us just give us one of those good lives. God, one of those. I just want that good life. And maybe we get that. But what if first we said, Lord, I just want to serve your kingdom. Surrender my life. And come what may, and we thank God for his blessings. But let's not be so wrapped up in trying to capture and get a hold of this life that is all about our comfort. What if we just give it away? Like, if we could see all of eternity, and then we just see the little dot of life that we live in. It's here and it's gone. We might say, you know what? It's not worth being so wrapped up in myself. What if I just give it away? And that's what Paul did, because we read earlier, Paul had his eyes on Jesus. He had his eyes upward, heavenward, and he was pressing on towards that goal. And you know what? He said, the here and now, that's whatever. I just want to make a difference that's going to affect eternity, and I want to just give this life away. And so he truly was a good example for us of how to surrender self. So he surrendered his stuff, gave up his things. He surrendered his status, gave up his fame. He surrendered his sin. He turned to Jesus. He surrendered his self. He devoted his life to spreading the message. How did Paul do it? How did he go from being so bad to such a great example for us? it's kind of funny, like with the teenagers, really the whole world, this whole Kanye West thing that's going on. All the pastors keep asking themselves, who's going to talk about Kanye in their sermon? But it gives us a good picture of like what might, I don't know the whole situation with Kanye, but what might have been going on in Paul's life, like this total life surrender, this total change. And it just really doesn't make sense because we don't see that all the time. And so what I want to know is like, how was he able to do that? Well, I think it goes back to his experience on the road to Damascus. When he was on his way to kill those Christians and he was still living in that sin, and then Jesus shows up. I think that Paul was able to surrender his whole life because he was divinely persuaded to surrender his whole life. He was persuaded by God. And I was born and raised in a Christian household, and it was kind of what I knew. But there was a moment in my life where it became real for me, where God persuaded me to follow him for myself, not just because it was how I was raised. And I think that if we want to truly surrender our lives, our whole lives to God, we need a divine persuasion. We need to encounter God in a real way. And there's, that moment, like you may be being divinely persuaded today, right now, I don't know. But when you feel God speaking deep in your bones and it's to you, like we have to act. Because there's a gift, and it's amazing. It's an amazing gift, and it's the gift that Jesus gave up his spot in heaven, came to earth, died on the cross, and rose again. But there's also a task, and the task is for us to do the same, to give up our life. And if we want to truly surrender our lives and follow Paul's example, it's going to mean giving up our whole lives. And we need that divine encounter with God. And when you have that, it'll never be the same. Because you're persuaded that, how can I not give up my life? How can I not surrender it all? In wars, when two armies are fighting and doing battle, and one army decides that it's over for them, and if we don't surrender, like we're going to die, what they'll do is they'll raise a white flag. And over time, it's just become the norm. It's become a worldwide that everyone knows that the white flag is a symbol of surrender. And I've always been fascinated with this, because how do you get to the point of you're willing to go to war, you're willing to fight, and you're expecting to win, to the point of, I don't think we're going to make it. I think we need to surrender. Like, how do you get to that point to where you make the decision to raise the white flag? And it's a sign of surrender. And by raising that flag, it's also kind of a sign of weakness. Because by surrendering, you're saying, like, we thought that we had it, we thought we were good enough, but you guys are stronger, and I don't think that we're really going to make it. And so, it's kind of exposing your weakness. So we raise the white flag, we surrender, it's over, you win. And Paul, on that road to Damascus, he essentially raised the white flag. He said, okay, my life, the way that I've been living, I realize that it's over. He essentially raised the white flag of weakness. He said, my way is not good enough. I'm going to live for your way now. And he accepted that weakness. But what Paul figured out is that God's power works best in weakness. And he wrote in 2 Corinthians 12:9, it's God talking to them, and he says, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. And so Paul said, therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weakness, so that Christ's power may rest on me. And so life is short, and I really beg you to choose weakness, choose surrender. Give it up, give up your life. And Paul's ultimate reason for surrendering his life was because Jesus surrendered his life. And he wrote about that in Philippians 2. He said, in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. And therefore, God has exalted him to the highest place and given him the name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus, every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue acknowledge that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Stand with me, Clearpoint. I think it's time for us to raise our white flag, to choose weakness. And I would invite you to do that today. You may want to declare it as they sing, as we're going to sing one more song. You may do that from your seat. Maybe you need to come up and maybe decide to surrender for the first time in your life. And as we do this, I would really encourage you to not spend any more time living life for ourselves. And this is kind of the ending to our Fall Fusion weekend. And so for our students, as they sing this song, I would encourage you to come, grab a white flag to remember the weekend by. And if you're out there and you want to surrender your life for the first time to Jesus today, I would encourage you to come grab a flag as well, because we've got plenty. But choose weakness today. Choose to surrender, because life is short, and the best thing we can do is just give it away, because Jesus gave his away. Let's sing together. Let's declare our weakness today.